Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 79, featuring the top 5 comfort food episodes, Redux. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight we have another bit of a milestone here on TrekRanks. We've hit episode 79, which, when you include our episode NX0, which was our very first episode when we started this thing 3 years ago, we're actually doing our 80th overall episode. And that is significant because, of course, there were 79 episodes of the original series, or 80 when you include the cage. And I've always loved the fact that TNG celebrated when they reached 79 episodes by naming their 79th episode Legacy. And I always knew, because that was kind of just a little bit of a special shout out, I always knew when we got to this number, we'd do something special as well. So for this topic, we are doing our first ever Redux topic. We're going back to episode 1, and that was our top 5 comfort food episodes. And we're going to redo it. We're going to do it over. And joining us for this special episode are two awesome guests. They are the husband and wife Trekkie team of Dana Kenedy and Matt Finbow. Welcome, Dana and Matt. You guys there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.
Yes, I'm excited to have you on. Dana, we have had on a couple of times. She's kind of been our unspoken Enterprise expert. She was on episode 46, Enterprise Underrated, and our top 5 to poll episodes, episode 66. And Matt is making his TrekRanks debut, which means, of course, for our first-time guests, we'd like to get their Trek origin story. So, Matt, what is your Trek backstory, and how did you get into Trek? Oh, and are you a completist or not? I don't even know this. I can't remember.
Everything from starting with TNG, I'm definitely confident that I've seen everything, because a few years ago, Dana and I did a complete series rewatch of TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and Enterprise. And I think this, Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, this was before Discovery came out? I think it was.
I think so. I think it was about a year or two before.
Yes.
So you just need to catch up on TOS, make sure.
Need to catch up on TOS and make sure that I sort of tick off those last few. I think
you've seen it. I usually, it was on at like 5 o'clock in the UK, so I would usually have it on and then would just cycle through them. So he's seen most of them.
Yeah. I remember when they were on in the UK, coming in, like I'd come home from work and be surprised 1 or 2 times by the episode that was on TV. Like, what? The Native American one? I don't remember this. So there were definitely a few that caught me off guard as being the first time that I saw it.
Yes, I think the one where they had to recite the Declaration of Independence you haven't seen before.
Two amazing high points.
Weird.
Yes. That one was amazing.
All right, well, Matt, how did you get into Trek then?
Okay, well, my early life relationship with science fiction media in general is a little bit clouded because, and this is something that I've told a few people, not too many people. When I was a very young child, I had a very bad phobia of E.T., the character of E.T. from the Steven Spielberg movie. And this was something that legitimately affected my my early childhood for a long time. I would have legitimate panic attacks, and I would just shut down whenever I saw images of this character on the TV or in a magazine or wherever. And it was just something that I think that my parents showed me the film when I was very, very young, and something inside my little kid brain, I would have been about 4 or 5 years old in the late 80s, just latched onto this and sort of couldn't deal with the way that character looked.
Wow.
And so it took a while for that phobia to go away. But a side effect of that is I kind of steered clear as a young kid of anything having to do with outer space or aliens or space travel, which Star Trek falls under that. So I think I remember one of the things that first made me aware of Star Trek is I used to watch, as a kid, I used to watch the show Reading Rainbow, hosted by LeVar Burton, Geordie LaForge. And they did an episode where they went to the set of The Next Generation, in like the Next Gen first season. I don't think I saw that when it first aired, but I probably saw it in reruns. And I remember sort of being intrigued and liking what I was seeing. They did like a tour of the sets. They showed some behind the scenes things of how the special effects were done, some of the ship models, and the makeup effects. And I thought, oh wow, that's like really cool and interesting. So I think Next Gen season 7 would have been my first like real like sort of continuous exposure to Star Trek.
That a lot to unpack there. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I think I probably talked for too long.
I think LeVar would be very happy to hear that. That's a really cool introduction to Trek, that it was through the Reading Rainbow. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's a very popular thing for I think people of your age. That's awesome. The ET thing, wow, that's I can totally see that. I have all the jokes, but I'm also like, I totally get it. That would be
yeah, I wasn't obviously to the same level, but like ET kind of creeped me out a little bit. It was never a movie I could rewatch very often because it was just slightly too eerie. But then I also watched things that were like highly inappropriate for me at like 4 or 5. Like I was obsessed with Indiana Jones and that Congo movie, if you recall. But anyways, I digress.
So that's awesome. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. All right, let's get rolling with our TrekRanks recalibration.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
As regular listeners will know by now, general order number 1 here at the TrekRanks podcast that we love Trek. We love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. And it's not really about the ranks. It's about an excuse to talk about Star Trek.
But what is that Vulcan motto? Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And what is diversity? A celebration of differences.
And as T'Pol and Dr. Phlox just said, TrekRanks is basically just a big old celebration of differences. There are no wrong answers here at TrekRanks. It's not about being right or definitive in any way. It's just about sharing all the things that we love about Star Trek. And we love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery and short treks and Star Trek Picard as well. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through 8 episodes of Star Trek Picard and everything before that. And one final reminder that we use episodes as a shorthand term, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Hailing frequencies are open.
And you can find TrekRanks on the net access interface links at trekranks.com, and you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. And you can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. At 609-512-5527. All right, so Dana and Matt, why don't you guys let everybody know how they can get a hold of you guys on the net access interface. Dana.
All right, so I am on Twitter as at Static Warp Bubble with no E. And I am on Tumblr as well at Static Warp Bubble with dashes in between the words and including an E.
Oh, awesome. And Matt?
You can find me on Twitter at They Might Be Geek.
Perfect. And thank you, Dana, for getting Matt on Twitter. Good job there.
Yes.
Good job there.
Yes, I tried very hard.
Yeah, I was,
and I'm glad.
I was a Twitter holdout for quite a long time, and but yeah, Dana convinced me to give it a shot, and I'm so glad that I did. Very, very happy to be a part of it now.
Yeah, the positives far outweigh the negatives on Twitter. Sometimes it's hard for people to see that, but it's true. Trust me.
Yeah, I have encountered my share of dodgy people on Twitter.
Yeah,
but you do that at the grocery store too. So.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Let's activate our level 1
right.
diagnostic to get into today's show.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
All right, so to get into this topic, we want to find out a little bit about what a comfort food episode is to everyone tonight, but we want to do that without getting into our Prime Directive. So as a quick tease, we've asked Dana and Matt to give us one piece of pop culture or media or something that they consider to be comfort food that's non-Trek, like a TV show or a movie or a book or a video game, whatever. So, Dana, what is your one non-Trek piece of comfort food media that you want to talk about?
So this will probably be no surprise to anybody who knows me and follows me on Twitter.
I just realized what it is.
Yeah, it's totally Jackie Chan movies. And I am like, I don't know, the past almost a year, Matt and I have been obsessively watching all of his movies and by extension, a bunch of other movies from Hong Kong. And yeah, Kung Fu movies are just totally my thing. And that's all I watch now, apart from Star Trek, of course. And there's just something really comforting about watching Jackie Chan beat up a bunch of people with a ladder.
That is amazing. That is what. Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
No, not yet.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Bruce Lee is in it. Yeah. Well, not Bruce Lee.
Right, of course. They have a scene, an homage to that. Yes.
Yes.
Matt, how about you? What is a non-Trek comfort food item for you?
If I had to pick one non-Trek comfort food item, it would probably be the movie Jurassic Park.
Ooh, yeah.
So that was an absolutely enormous part of my childhood, that film, because I was a huge dinosaur nerd when I was a kid, in addition to being a Star Trek nerd after I got into Star Trek. So I loved dinosaurs with a passion, and I still do. Yeah. So Jurassic Park to me it's one of those movies that's just like endlessly rewatchable. And every time I watch it again, I'm kind of, just like transported back to childhood. And I think I was saying on Twitter a little while ago that if there was one thing that I wish I could experience again for the first time, it would be that film, because 9-year-old me sitting in the movie theater watching those dinosaurs appear on the screen for the very first time, that was just a mind-blowing experience. So yeah,
that's a classic pick. I mean, I got to think that's a comfort food for a lot of people. It's such an awesome movie.
Yeah.
I'm glad you picked that, because mine's kind of yours is in the genre, at least for science fiction. And mine is too. I tried to go outside of science fiction, and I wanted to go outside of Trek, because really Trek is my comfort food. So I just cheated because I picked Galaxy Quest, because it's so perfect. You can watch it over and over again. It's one of the most brilliant movies in terms of
I agree. I was obsessed with that movie. I saw it in theaters, I think 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
It was,
It's just so smart and so funny, and such a perfect, again, homage to Trek. And yes, I love it. I cannot get enough of it. And it's total comfort food.
It's such a great just love letter to Trek and everything that
it really is.
That it stands for.
An absolute love letter to Trek, for sure. All right, let's get into our Prime Directives.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
One of the reasons I have Dana and Matt on the show is because Dana's been on a couple of times. They lived in England. I know they just moved their entire existence back to Canada, where Dana's originally from. And I figured, well, A, that's a better time zone, so it's a lot easier to match up for recording time.
Yes.
But B, I figured they probably are in the need of some comfort in terms of relocating their whole lives and everything. So I want to get a feel for your guys' Prime Directive on how you narrowed down your list for these comfort food Trek episodes. So Dana, what was your Prime Directive?
So I decided to exclude the movies because I knew that my list could be just the movies. Right. So I focused only on the episodes. But my reasoning for picking these was kind of the ones that I would want to watch on the plane back to Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And some of these are actually one of the ones, or some of them I did watch on the plane back to Canada because I hate flying. And I am not a good flyer. So I need to be preoccupied and I need to just think about other things. So these episodes would definitely help.
Okay, so this is also your flight marathon list. That's fantastic. There's no better comfort food than that. How about you, Matt? How did you break it down?
Comfort food episodes. It's a very, very personal topic for each individual person. I think mine were at least partially rooted in nostalgia. I know that some of them are kind of connected to like a special memory or a feeling from my childhood, which is like closer to when I got into Trek. So for me, a good criteria for a comfort food episode would be something that leaves me feeling kind of safe and secure and happy, like kind of like being wrapped up in a warm blanket, and maybe something that has some qualities that remind me why I got into Trek in the first place and what I kind of love about that universe. So I don't think all of these are necessarily nostalgia rooted. There might be one of them might be a comfort food episode because I really take comfort in the message or the story of that episode. But yeah, I think that about sums it up.
Awesome. You had me at rooted in nostalgia. That's a great starting point for a topic like this. And for me, I usually end up just, kind of brainstorming my picks. But for this topic, since it's a Redux, I had to make sure I wasn't repeating myself from episode 1. So that was my first rule of the Prime Directive. I didn't want to repeat myself because what would be the point in that? So before I got too deep into it, I had been kind of rummaging around thinking about a few topics. And then when I finally went back to check my comfort food from the first episode, 3 of them were from that first episode. I was man, I am brutally consistent. That's so I had to eliminate those and kind of just change the way I was thinking. And I didn't put any restrictions on myself once I eliminated those 5 episodes. But like you said, Dan, I think that's kind of my starting point, was things that just soothe me, just to, make me, no matter if you're having a bad day or a hard day, just put it on and you feel better.
Yeah.
And you never get tired of it.
Another criteria that I had was I wanted to kind of be honest with myself about what a comfort food episode was to me. And by that, I mean, I didn't go out of my way to include deep cuts, even though I kind of had a desire to, because this is my first podcast appearance. So I kind of wanted to impress with my deep cut knowledge of Trek. But yeah, I was just really 100% honest with myself about what is a comfort food episode.
Understood. Well, we love deep cuts, but we love all cuts. So.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think we're ready to have Third Roboticon introduce us to the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, Third Roboticon. And as always, just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease our pick. Then we'll reveal our top 5 comfort food episode Redux and the specific reasons we're highlighting it. And at the end, we'll ask everyone for a few secondary system selections for the picks that maybe just missed our list. And as always, if we have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. And as a special bonus, if anyone picks any of my previous 5, we're going to have another special sound. So I'm not going to tell you what that is, only if it happens. Okay, Dana, let's kick this off with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 comfort food episode Redux?
My number 5, my 5 words is, this lab is pretty groovy. Hashtag Freakosaurus.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, you might notice a bit of a theme with some of the episodes that I choose. I love time travel. I'm obsessed with time travel and anything to do with like weird timey-wimey things. So obviously this is one of my favorite Voyager episodes. And it's probably the most rewatched episode of Voyager. I watched it probably for the first time, I don't think when it aired, but shortly after in reruns, and I was just obsessed with it. And it was just so cool because it was like present day Earth, and I know it's like 20 years later now, but it was so cool to see them like in the present day. They're wearing the clothes that I wear. So exciting.
90s clothes.
I love this pick. I love that this is quintessential Trek. I love that we haven't actually said the title of the episode yet, but everybody knows what we're talking about because it's Rain Robinson and Future's End, of course.
Agent Tuvok, what's up?
Breakfast is up. Have you made any progress?
I think so.
Chili burritos, foot-long hot dogs, and Goliath gulps. This is not a breakfast, this is an afternoon at Dodger Stadium.
And that is a non sequitur. Would you please hand me a burrito?
Everything you guys do is just a little bit off.
These things are kind of crude. So much for sending a locator signal.
There is another option.
The radio dish at the observatory. We could use the same setup.
The same setup that I used to send that message to your... whatever it is up in orbit.
We will require your assistance.
No kidding.
Well?
Not in an empty stomach.
Matt, what's your take on this pick?
It's such a good episode. I had a feeling that there would be some time travel episodes in Dana's list, and I won't. I'll get into more of my guesses for hers.
Yeah, by the way, in our Regeneration Cycle, everybody, we're going to have both Dana and Matt reveal their predictions after the fact for what they each were going to have for their list. We got a lot of stuff going on here, so. But yeah, awesome pick.
This is one of my favorite Voyager episodes as well. Like Dana said, it's just a super fun episode from beginning to end, and it's a two-parter, so it's twice as much fun.
Bonus track.
Yeah, it literally has everything. It has the mobile emitter. Harry gets to be the captain of the ship. Cass and Neelix watch soap operas. Like, where are you going wrong? Nowhere.
Massive cliffhangers, a great villain. So
right, that was the episode where they introduced the mobile emitter. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, big deal.
All right, Matt, how about you, man? What's your number 5 pick?
My number 5 pick, my 5 words is stranded in the Delta Quadrant, and my hashtag is 70,000 light years from home. It's the series premiere of Star Trek Voyager, Caretaker.
Oh, I love that. Yes. That's a good comfort episode.
Okay, so Voyager premiered in 1995, which was right in the kind of epicenter of the beginning of my Trek love. So I mentioned in the intro, like season 7 of Next Gen was kind of my overall introduction to Star Trek, but Voyager was the first Star Trek series that I watched brand new from the beginning when it aired. Mm-hmm. And I remember the series premiere of this being a huge event for me. I was so excited about it. I saw the commercials on TV prior to it. And in addition to that, I just think it's just a great introduction to the series. You know, there was some very familiar aspects of Trekness about it, and then there were some things that felt completely new because it had a very different setting than previous Trek series.
Astonishing! You Federations are obviously an advanced culture.
The Federation is made up of many cultures. I am Vulcan.
Neelix. Good to meet you. Interesting. What exactly does all this do?
I assure you that everything in this room has a specific function. However, it would take several hours to explain it all. I suggest we proceed to your quarters. Perhaps you would care for a bath.
A what?
It's a very nostalgia-soaked pick for me because I was young and enthusiastic Star Trek fan, just getting into it at that time. So every time I watch it, I'm just kind of taken right back to those memories.
I was old and enthusiastic, and also nostalgic for that moment. That was fantastic. Dana, any quick take on Caretaker?
I love it. I think it's the second best series premiere for me, but it's a good introduction to a show, and I think it held up very, very well after all these years. I think I have it on tape. I bought the official Caretaker tape. It's somewhere downstairs in the basement, so we can find it one day.
We should go look for it after this.
Yeah, we'll go hunt. But it's a really exciting show, and I think it was a really good introduction to a fun cast.
Yeah, so I rewatched it in preparation for this, and I think it's really interesting to contrast the characters in the opening episode with sort of how they are later in the series, to kind of see how far they've come, and particularly the Doctor really stands out as someone who had amazing character development, because he's so different in this pilot episode from how he was later on, after he kind of expanded his personality. One detail that stuck out to me in this rewatch was I forgot how much of a Star Wars homage the opening scene of this of Caretaker is, because it opens with a text crawl.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, that explains kind of what's going on in the galaxy at this point, and then there's the little Maquis ship that's being chased by the big Cardassian ship, and it's almost a beat for beat echo of the opening of Star Wars: A New Hope.
Yeah,
I never actually noticed that before.
I never thought of that either, but that's a good call. Well, as far as series premieres go, episode 12 of TrekRanks, our top 5 series premieres. You can go back and see where it ended up on that episode. All right, let's close out round 5. Is there anything more comfortable than a 2-hour episode of Voyager? I don't think so, because round 5 features 3 2-hour episodes of Voyager. My 5 words in a hashtag: perfect exploration of holographic rights, hashtag, or the exact opposite of virtuoso and author. And for me, it is Voyager Season 7, episode Flesh and Blood, speaking of the Doctor. I love this episode so much. It's one of my go-tos for just not necessarily fun, because it's kind of a deep episode in terms of the topic, but just the grand scope of everything they're trying to do in this episode. For me, it's the best Doctor story for his plight for his rights as a sentient being, and I just find it just really engrossing. It also kind of shits all over Doctrine, which I love. So I'm not a big Doctrine fan. So just a huge story. I hate Iden. I hate what he represents, and I love the way they bring back the Hirogen and the connection to the Killing Game. And for me, this is just one of these episodes I love to rewatch over and over again. Does a great job of moving characters forward, like the Doctor and B'Elanna and Janeway too, in terms of their relationships. One of my favorites, bit of a deep cut. Dana, what's your take on Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched this episode, so I'm struggling to remember details, but I do remember it being very, very good.
Yeah, by the way, it's the one, because it is a deep cut. Yeah. It's the one where the holographic ship, where the ship of holograms shows up and the Doctor ends up joining them. Yeah. They're trying to basically eradicate.
I think it's a pivotal episode for the Doctor's character development, because season 7 was a very Doctor-heavy season. Yeah. And I think this one was kind of a turning point for that.
Yeah, this is a high point for that for me.
Yeah.
Matt, any take on Flesh and Blood really quick?
It's been a while since I've seen this one too, but I think the Doctor was the character in Voyager that I think grew the most from the first season to the last season, and like Dana said, the final season of Voyager did a huge amount of sort of exploring just how far the Doctor had come, and I know that he was faced with some pretty big decisions in this episode that sort of tested kind of where his loyalties lay, and he was being pulled in 2 different directions between different groups of people, holograms versus his organic friends, and I think it goes a long way to show sort of how far he grew.
This one, people tend to forget about this episode a little bit. So super deep cut and one of my favorites. All right, let's go to round 4. Dana, what's your number 4 pick for comfort food episodes?
My 5 words are tossed salad and scrambled eggs, hashtag 3 of a kind. So of course, cause and effect.
Yes.
So kind of like Matt, this one is a bit of a nostalgic pick for me, because I saw it again very, very young. It was somewhere in the 90s, and it just stuck with me. And again, it's a time episode, time loop.
Oh yeah.
I just, from a very early age, I was obsessed with time and blame Back to the Future.
Yep.
That's another story. But there's also a really kind of eerie story around this. So very, very, very early on, when Matt and I were dating, it was probably like a month or something in our relationship, I was at work and I randomly remembered this episode, and I was like, oh, that's a really good episode. I'm going to watch that again soon. And that evening, Matt randomly says to me, I feel like watching that Star Trek time loop episode. And it was just
I remember that.
so creepy because there was no...
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was so weird. Like, I didn't say anything, and just out of the blue, they're like, I want to watch that. And so that was like, I don't know, maybe we were in a time.
I think you guys were stuck in a temporal causality loop.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I just, regardless of that, it's such a good episode. It's like, to me, it's almost a mystery story, because Dr. Crusher, every episode or every loop is just sort of getting it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's really cool how it unfolds. And then, of course, we have Kelsey Grammer at the end, so that's pretty cool.
The structure and how it's presented is amazing. It's an all-time classic. Matt, what's your quick take on it?
This is absolutely one of my favorite episodes of Next Gen. If you asked me to do a top 10, maybe even a top 5, this would be up there. Yeah, no, absolutely. I like time travel stories. Maybe not quite so much as Dana. I think she's the absolute queen of that. But no, this is just such an intriguing, like she said, mystery story from the beginning. Yeah, I think it's fantastic acting from everyone in the episode as they're sort of slowly piecing the clues together about what's going on. And then every loop, they're sort of remembering a little bit more. That was fantastic.
Well, I have to say, Dana, since you are the time travel aficionado, I am too, by the way, but I now have to start keeping a track of your Brandon Braga picks, because you're 2 for 2 so far. Both Brandon Braga scripts. He's the king of Trek time travel and one of my favorite Trek scribes. So that's pretty cool.
You know what? I never made that.
Yeah, once you kind of realize that he's so good. There's so many.
I'm gonna have to look up my other.
So many good time travel episodes.
Wow.
All right, Matt, how about you? What's your number 4 pick?
My number 4 pick. My 5 words are a visit from temporal investigations and hashtag classic 23rd century design. It is, of course, Trials and Tribulations.
All-time classic.
I love it.
Again, this is probably not that deep of a cut. I think if people are, I have a feeling this may come up on quite a few people's comfort food Trek lists. But
yeah. It's on my secondary system.
Yeah, it's just such an amazingly nonstop fun episode from start to finish, and every time I watch it, it fills me with all of those warm and fuzzy comfort feelings that I was mentioning.
It's been my observation that most humanoids love soft, furry animals, especially if they make pleasing sounds.
They do nothing but consume food and breed. If you feed that thing more than the smallest morsel, in a few hours you'll have 10 tribbles, then 100, then 1,000.
Calm down.
They were once considered mortal enemies of the Klingon Empire.
This? A mortal enemy of the Empire?
They were an ecological menace, a plague to be wiped out.
Wiped out? What are you saying?
Hundreds of warriors were sent to track them down throughout the galaxy. An armada obliterated the Tribble homeworld. By the end of the 23rd century, they had been eradicated.
Another glorious chapter of Klingon history. Tell me, do they still sing songs of the great Tribble hunt?
It's Trek doing a fantastic job of celebrating itself and having fun with its own legacy, and also not being afraid to kind of poke fun at its own sillier aspects while also kind of being respectful of them. So yeah, it's just complete fun, and I love it.
No, perfect pick. Another perfectly structured episode. Dana, where's this one for you on your time travel?
I love it. It's one of my favorite episodes. And another story early on in our relationship, I actually hadn't seen this episode.
That's right.
And Matt was the one who showed it to me.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was really fun, because I hadn't seen much of Deep Space Nine. I've seen a few episodes as it was airing, but I was more Voyager every week and Enterprise. So I don't think I even knew this episode existed. So it was 12 years ago or so. I don't know how long we've been together.
This will be 12 years. 2020 is 12 years.
Yeah, about 12 years ago, you showed it to me, and I was like, yes, this is great.
That's amazing. That's super cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's close out round 4 with my pick, and I'm cheating again. My 5 words in a hashtag. First three-parter is Comfort Home Run, hashtag Cardassian in his underwear. And I love the Circle trilogy from Deep Space Nine. My specific episode's The Homecoming, but really it's all three. This is the first three-parter in the history of Trek, and I just go back to it all the time. This is one of these ones that I rewatch anytime I've got a good amount of time to sit down. I can never get enough of it. You got the big stakes, a rescue mission, nasty villains with Minister Jarrow, and played by Frank Langella, and the super cool political intrigue that they're really launching with Bajor and Cardassia. This is really where Deep Space Nine you can really point to, kind of realizing, wow, the potential for this series. Huge Star Trek world building at that point at the beginning of season 2. There's palookas. I love those palookas in the last episode. little furry dog spider creatures. And Lee Nollis telling Cisco about how he's not a war hero. There's just so much going on in this episode. The great scene with Kira and when she's leaving and all her friends are coming by. And they're kind of going through this one long take with everyone's a little bit of a farce. Anyway, I love it. It's one of my all-time favorites. Matt, what's your take on the Circle trilogy?
I don't remember very much about this. I'm really ashamed to say that after you.
Well, it's another deep cut, so you're gonna have to, and it's another big like Trek moment that I think people kind of forget about in terms of being really good. So you don't have too much.
Well, what it makes me think of is, I think for me, like a comfort food episode tends to skew towards like the more lighthearted, and certainly not all of my picks fall into that category. But you can have a comfort episode that is, like you were saying, more about, more into the political intrigue and, some of the darker aspects of the Trek universe, which Deep Space Nine certainly wasn't afraid to delve into. But it's just like whatever qualifies as a comfort episode to you, and I think that's a fantastic pick.
Yeah, my list is definitely not lighthearted. Dana, any quick take on the Circle trilogy?
I remember it. It's very, very good. I think for me, as I said earlier, I hadn't watched much of Deep Space Nine as it was airing, so I got the wonderful privilege of binge watching it. And this one was, I think, the turning point of Deep Space Nine, where it was on a different scale. It was more epic from this point on. Like, you saw what it could be, and just like how big this show got, and it got way bigger than this. Like the 7th season is just crazy.
That's a great way to frame it, though. This was kind of the tipping point for the scale.
Yeah, it was when it became aware, like the show was being more ambitious in a lot of ways than what Trek had been before, especially compared with TNG. But this was Deep Space Nine kind of ramping up and going, okay, we're going to tell really, really epic stories that are going to challenge you and kind of challenge your perceptions of what Trek can be.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, and there was no reset button at the end, which is really cool. Like, this is where we're like, okay, there are effects later on in the series. Yeah. It's not just this happened and we've moved on. This is where we got that long form story, which is great.
Massively ahead of its time on that scale for sure. Okay, let's go to the soup round. Dana, what's your number 3 pick?
Yay, okay. So number 3, 5 words. No, it's not Westworld. Hashtag Archer wears a hat. And I chose North Star.
Yay! Oh, wow. Hold on.
Why have you suspended the game?
Because this is not a rematch. You have made a mockery of me.
Yes.
That was Sirna Kolrami, the master strategist from Zach Dorn, because this is our first duplicate pick. I had North Star on my list from the first episode of TrekRanks. So we have a crossover duplicate pick. Awesome pick. Dana, North Star, that was on my list. I love it. Why'd you pick it?
Amazing. So it's one of the episodes I downloaded onto my phone, and I watched it. I think it was the first episode I watched on the plane right after takeoff, which is when I'm the worst. And the wine and gin and other wine I had also helped on the plane. But this one, it's a really good episode. And it's got the like classic Trek feels of the whole Spectre of a Gun and also Fistful of Datas. But I think of those 3 Western ones, this is my favorite. And on the surface, it's a light episode because you're like, oh, they go to the Wild West and like they're cowboys, but it's actually not a light episode at all. And it's just, I think it's one of those really good Star Trek episodes where it's the like right versus wrong, but it's kind of ambiguous in places, and it's really good.
It's so good.
It's
and
fantastic.
This is why it was on my list in the first episode of TrekRanks. It's all those things you just said, and it just feels comfortable. It's got that old Western feel. It's just that right versus wrong. It's really satisfying at the end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great to see all our characters in this kind of new environment doing the right thing. And it's fantastic. I love it. Matt, what's your take on North Star?
This is absolutely an amazing episode. One of my favorite Enterprise episodes. You guys were right. It definitely, in a lot of ways, it feels a lot like a TOS throwback. It's got the kind of Old West planet setting. Yep. There's a lot of there's some fish out of water moments where they're kind of hide the fact that they're humans from a starship. They're trying to blend in, but then it also has that a very it's an allegorical episode, so it's talking a lot about a lot of big themes like racism and prejudice and all of the negative effects of those. Trek was is always kind of at its best, to me at least, when it's at least being a little bit allegorical and kind of talking about issues, but framing them in a sci-fi context, and trying to get a positive message across. So yeah, like Dana was saying, very, very fun episode, but also very serious episode at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, not lighthearted at all. And it's also one of those ones that you just, when you kind of see the premise, or you're thinking, this probably isn't going to work, but then it totally works. Yeah. It's just a home run.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it was like in the middle of the 3rd season, so they're in the Xindi War, and then suddenly they go to the cowboy.
Exactly, right.
What is happening?
In terms of
it's
the placement.
standout for me.
Yeah. Totally agree. It's one of my all-time favorites. By the way, written by David Goodman, who works with Brandon Braga on the Orville now. So we'll just keep linking it. And it's kind of a time travel episode.
It's a bunch
of cowboys.
It could work.
All right, Matt, how about you? What's your number 3 pick?
My number 3 pick. So my first choice was my first pick was a series opener, and now I'm going with the series closer. So my 5 words are past, present, and future collide, and hashtag all good things must come to an end. It's the series finale of Next Gen, All Good Things.
Yes.
So good. So good. This is honestly, this should be on my list. For some reason I hadn't thought about this one, but it is an absolute go-to for comfort food. I love it.
Absolutely. So I watched this on the air when it aired in 1994. I remember we taped it off of TV on a VHS tape. You remember those? And I would watch this endlessly as a kid. Yeah. And I've been thinking about this episode recently anyway, before we even were doing this podcast, because of the Picard series and kind of how All Good Things presents a very different alternate future for Picard than what has actually ended up happening to him in the canon of the Picard series. I find it interesting that both of them begin with Picard kind of in retirement at his vineyard. Both of them have a subplot involving Romulans. So there's some connections between the one and the other. But I think this is absolutely some of Patrick Stewart's all-time best acting. He's just he brings such amazing pathos when he's especially when he's in the future and he's trying to convince everyone around him that no, I'm not crazy. These things really are happening to me. I'm not just a I'm not a senile old man. You have to take me seriously. I think it's just absolutely wonderful.
I love that you said that. It is some of Patrick Stewart's best work ever. I was going to bring this up and you kind of just summarized it though. The links from this episode to the Picard series is amazing to me. It's absolutely incredible. I know that the Picard series is not a sequel to The Next Generation, but the way that they use elements of this episode in the Picard series with the aromatic syndrome and the fact that he needs to go on one last mission. And one of my favorite moments in Picard is when he, in Maps and Legends, the second episode, when he says, I can't ask Worf, Geordi, and Riker to help me again on another crazy mission, because he remembers what happened.
That's right. He retained
all his memories.
He retained his memories of that happening.
Yeah.
So he knows what they went through previously, and he wasn't going to ask him again. And to me, I love that.
I never made that connection until now. That's
love this episode.
Yeah.
The connections are crazy. So Dana, what's your quick take on All Good Things?
This is, I think, one of the perfect episodes of Next Gen. It's just so well done and a fantastic way to close a great show.
Which is another element. It's not only is a great episode, one of the great finales in the history of television.
The closing scene is such an amazing tearjerker to me when Picard goes in and he sits down at the poker table, and you can feel the camaraderie between everyone there. It's just brings a tear to my eye every time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go to my round 3 pick. Close out the soup round. My 5 words in a hashtag. Underrated script equals rousing adventure. Hashtag hit me with that psionic resonator. It is from The Next Generation, another 2-parter from season 7 to go with Matt's pick. This one is Gambit. Ooh. And it is a completely underrated Star Trek gem. It's just straight up swashbuckling fun. You have the death of Picard at the beginning, this huge emotion of Riker and Troy trying to deal with that. You've got Riker and Picard getting together later on this ship, kind of trying to figure out the mystery of what those vagabonds are trying to do. There's just so much going on. It's just super fun. It's not really about anything, even though there is some great emotion in the beginning. Oh, you've got Data as a commander. He's kind of going back and forth with Worf, going toe-to-toe with Worf. I love that. This episode is just absolutely one of my go-tos to rewatch, to feel good, and just have a good time watching Star Trek. Added bonus, it has this great reveal at the end with the Vulcan isolationist movement and the Stone of Gaul. And I'll tell you, I've always loved this episode since it first aired. And then after I had the fortune of being in Star Trek, I was rewatching this one day, and they mentioned the Time of Awakening, and I was like, oh my God, I can't even believe it. I didn't realize that was in this episode. So super cool, one of my favorites. And Matt, what's your take on Gambit?
I absolutely love this episode. It's season 7 of Next Gen had some fantastic episodes in it.
Season 7, let me just say, go to TrekRanks, check it out. I have like 7 season 7 episodes in the top 20. Now, granted, there's a whole bunch of other episodes that are nowhere near the bottom.
Oh yeah,
but the highs of season 7 are amazing. Lower Decks, All Good Things, Gambit, and there's more I can't think of right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I digress.
No, this was such a fun episode. Like you said, swashbuckling. We got to see, there was intrigue. I love the reveal at the end with the psionic weapon. Yeah. We got to see Picard. Not only was he playing this, this other character undercover on the ship. This episode also played into his personal love of archaeology.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a side of Picard that we didn't get to see too often on the show, but it was brought up enough that, we were all aware that this was a huge passion of his. So he got to indulge in that. And he got to play a swashbuckling pirate along the way. It's great.
Archaeology and pirates. There's just so much in this episode. Dana, what's your take on it?
I love it too. It's one of those ones that sort of snuck up on me. I watched it and I was like, oh, that was good. And then I kind of watched it a few more times when it was on reruns and stuff. And I was just like, yes, this is great. But yeah, it's fun. Yeah. That's all you can say about it. It's really good TV.
And there's another Star Trek Picard connection in this episode, because both in this one and in Stardust City Rag, he's going undercover and he's sort of putting on this other persona that he's trying to fool people with. And I thought that was really great.
That's a good connection too.
Yeah.
I love it.
Patrick Stewart acting as Picard, who is then acting as this other character.
Which he did in Gambit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to round 2. Dana, what's your number 2 comfort food episode, Redux?
So my number 2 one was very, very almost my top choice, but last minute I sort of switched them around. So 5 words, the 7 of 9 paradox, hashtag the Janeway factor, and it's Voyager's relativity.
So much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
This is on my secondary systems.
Yes. So this is, again, it's one of those nostalgic ones. I remember watching this on TV for the first time as it aired when it was a new episode, and my mind was just blown. So I think I'd watched Back to the Future not too long earlier, but this one was just like, oh my God. The guy who was trying to catch the guy ended up being the guy. And it was just like, what? And it's such a good time travel story. And you have 7 of 9 just being awesome. And it was a 7 of 9 story that didn't revolve around the Borg, which I thought was really cool. And it's just, I love it. I don't even know how many times I've rewatched it,
Same.
but I just never get bored of it.
Same. And you know, it's a sequel of sorts to Future's End, because it's the same character, Captain Braxton.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So I love that bookend for your pick. This is totally rewatchable, total comfort food. I love this pick.
I get the feeling I'm about to be drafted.
In exchange for leniency, Captain Braxton informed us of the precise moment he boarded Voyager to plant the weapon. We'll be sending you to stop him. Tell her.
Deck 4, Section 38. I'll stumble over a wounded crew member. That will be your chance to capture me.
Don't miss it, or we'll have to do this all over again.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. I'm going back in time to stop Braxton. But you already have him.
And there's a third one in our brig. I arrested him earlier today. But don't worry. They'll all be reintegrated in time for the trial.
And 7.
Well, I assure you, when all this is over, there'll be just one 7 of 9.
All right, let's get started before my headache gets any worse.
Matt, what's your take on relativity?
Yeah, I should have known that this would be on her list, because it's one of the most wibbly wobbly, timey wimey episodes of Star Trek.
Totally.
Yep, where there's multiple attempts to send 7 back to the past to kind of pinpoint the moment where the weapon was placed on where the device was placed on Voyager, and she keeps screwing it up and dying, and they keep sending her back again and again and again. And so there's lots of time travel shenanigans, which is absolutely great.
Yeah,
we get to see Voyager back when it's still in dry dock, going back. Yeah,
yes,
that's one of the most fun elements of it, for sure.
Absolutely.
This one is not Brandon Braga. It's actually I'm pretty sure it's Brian Fuller. I think. Not sure if he wrote it or if he has a story credit, but all right, awesome. Let's go to Matt. What's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 pick. So this one I watched on the plane back from England to Canada. My 5 words are Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra, hashtag the hope of communication. And it is, of course, the classic TNG episode, Darmok.
Incredibly rewatchable, another classic.
Yeah, again, not a very deep cut. I'm sure this is high on everyone's list of best TNG episodes, certainly. But to me, this is a comfort episode for me, because it represents everything that is wonderful and unique and important about Star Trek, all embodied within a single episode. And I feel very comforted by the message of this episode, and it's centered around the concept of communication. So we have a tense situation with a potential foe whose culture and way of thinking is fundamentally different from those of the Federation and humans.
Temba, his arms wide when you gave me the knife and the fire. Could that mean give? Temba, his arms wide. Darmok. Give me more about Darmok.
Darmok on the ocean.
This situation is ultimately resolved peacefully through patience and cooperation, and especially Picard's willingness to broaden his outlook and pursue communication with this other person. And I think it's so hopeful and wonderful and great.
That's a great summary. All-time classic.
Absolutely.
Totally rewatchable. Super big emotion. It's incredible. And it's just peak Picard because he's so smart. And this is one of those, I say this a lot about certain episodes, but this is one to always put yourself back into it the first time you saw it. And just that moment when you realize at the end when he's communicating to them in the language, it's just super, super cool.
Absolutely.
Deanna, what's your take on Darmok?
For me, this is just the epitome of Star Trek. It's the Star Trekiest Star Trek to me. Totally. And it's fantastic. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's just really good.
Oh, fantastic acting from Patrick Stewart and Paul Winfield.
Who played
the captain in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you can feel them when they're down on the planet, each of them trying to have patience with the other one as they're kind of struggling to understand each other, but neither one of them want to give up. I think that's fantastic. I think my favorite part of the episode is when the Temerian captain is kind of dying, and Picard is telling him the tale of Gilgamesh, even though he can't fully understand it, but it doesn't matter because they're just having that moment of connection, and it's just, it's so great.
Gilgamesh.
Yes.
I appreciate the shout out for Paul Winfield, one of our favorites, one of my favorite actors. So great. Okay, let's go to my round 2 pick. This is a super deep cut.
Oh no.
You're gonna love it. Dan is gonna love this pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Enterprise finds ally in Greylick. Hashtag A New Hope. A second Star Wars reference. This is The Shipment from Enterprise, Season 3, Episode 7. This is another episode that I think people just have kind of forget about and miss. I find this episode really soothing. I rewatch it a lot, even though it's kind of in the middle of the Xindi arc. I rewatch it as a standalone. And I love what it represents inside the Xindi arc. So up until this point, there was a lot of panic and desperation at what the Enterprise crew was doing. It felt like they were in revenge mode, and it was kind of a weird time in the United States a couple years after 9/11, and everyone kind of filled with this self-doubt. And this episode, they finally have their first kind of big lead to try and stop the Xindi and maybe get a little revenge. And they finally kind of come face to face with one, and it's Greylig, the Arboreal. And of course, it's never as simple as you think it's going to be. And despite they find this chemosite processing facility, and they just want to blow it up and be like, all right, this is going to set them back. But as they go through this episode, they realize blowing it up is not going to stop the Xindi from coming after us. We have to find a different way. They forge this relationship with Greylig, and they start kind of realizing they can approach this maybe in a different way to stop the Xindi from attacking Earth. And it's just beautiful. I think it's a real hopeful episode, and it's the kind of starting point to figuring out exactly how they're going to solve this huge dilemma of trying to stop the Xindi out on their own. And it's got some big scope too. I really love the CGI of the plant, and it feels like they're up in the mountains, even though they're on a sound stage, and they got those little drones flying in to attack them. Just a big, cool episode. Dana, what's your take on The Shipment?
You know I love this episode. So it's fantastic. I think one of my favorite Enterprise episodes.
Yeah, it's underrated.
It really is underrated. It's very, I keep saying, it's very good, but it is.
Well, we did underrated Enterprise. I wonder if we mentioned it. I don't know. Episode 46 of TrekRanks.
I can't remember if it was one of my choices or if it was almost one of my choices, but it is really just, I think, a really good Archer episode.
Yeah, it really is. And for Reed as well. Everyone learns hey, there's going to be a different way to approach this thing. So, yeah, for sure. Matt, what's your take on The Shipment?
Yeah, this was a great episode. Season 3 of Enterprise just had this enormous scope to it, and this was definitely one of the standout episodes of that entire season. And I know that it was, on the whole, it was a great allegory for, of course, 9/11 and the aftermath of those events. And yeah, people were Trek has always been great at doing allegories, and people in the real world were very, there was a lot of anger and resentment floating around the world at that time, and it's certainly reflected in this season and in this episode. But I think it has that Trek hopefulness kicking in, where they kind of realize that, okay, maybe things aren't quite as black and white as we as our emotions are leading us to believe, and maybe not all of these people are our enemies, and maybe there's a different resolution to this problem that can be found. There's partnerships, and there's teamwork, and there's the first inklings of trust developing again, and so I think absolutely this is such a standout episode from a very dark season, but a really good season as well.
Yep, good summary. All right, let's go to round one and close it out. Dana, what's your top comfort food episode, Redux?
So this is the episode where if I'm kind of feeling bad and on a plane, I will put it on for sure. My 5 words are find him and kill him, #Spaceball, and take me out to the holosuite.
Yeah, I knew it from the 5 words. Brilliant.
Yes. It's just so much fun. And it's kind of like Enterprise, where they're in the middle of this big war. It's really dark, and then suddenly there's a baseball episode, and it's just so much fun. There's this petty feud between Vulcan and Sisko, and they have to solve it with baseball. It's fantastic.
And it totally works 100%.
Yes.
And my emotion for this episode is always at the ending, when Sisko realizes how wrong he is, and he gets Rom back in the game. And then at the end, they're all just celebrating in the bar. And it's just
even though they lost.
To manufactured triumph. The absolute, honestly, one of my favorite moments in all of Deep Space Nine is that celebration in the bar.
I'm sorry.
Apology accepted.
If you have some time one day, maybe you can teach me how to bunt.
Sure. What's a bunt?
Oh.
I fail to see why you are celebrating. Ferenghi's bunt was an accident, and you still lost the game.
You are absolutely right. And I couldn't be happier. Quark! A round of drinks for the house on my tab.
I'm way ahead of you, Captain. You are attempting to manufacture a triumph where none exists.
I'd say he succeeded.
To manufactured triumph.
Manufactured triumph. Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Matt, what's your take on Take Me Out to the Holosuite?
This one is right up there with Trials and Tribulations for me. This was on my secondary systems, so it's definitely a high pick for me as well. Again, when Deep Space Nine has this reputation as being the dark Star Trek series, but when it had fun, it really knew how to have fun. And this is such an amazing episode that shows, like Dana said, they're in the middle of a long drawn out war, but they have this respite, and they go to the holosuite and they play a game of baseball with Vulcans. And again, this is such a quotable episode. So many moments.
Death to the opposition.
Yes, death to the opposition. Oh my God.
So many quotes. My mind is already racing about which one I'm going to drop in right here.
Strike 3! What? What are you talking about? That ball is at least a half a meter out. How can you call it a strike? Reverse the call. Reverse the call.
That was low and outside.
The ball was clearly outside.
Oh, what the hell were you looking at? You can't tell me that ball was over the plate. What were you doing? Regenerating?
Caught the outside corner.
Outside corner?
Right foot. That was a ball and you know it. We should have 2 men on. 2 men on. 2 men on.
Gentlemen, you are trying my patience.
No, wait. You stole the run from us. You stole it just as if you reached up and tore off the scoreboard. You stole it from us.
You're out of here!
What?
No player shall at any time make contact with the umpire in any manner. The prescribed penalty for the violation is immediate ejection from the game. Rule number 4.06, subsection A, paragraph 4. Look it up, but do it in the stands. You're gone!
We'll find out what that was when you listen to this episode. Okay, I love this episode. Everything about it. It's an all-time classic. And you said Deep Space Nine was the dark Star Trek series, but it was the everything Star Trek series too, because it was also the fun series, the light series, the arc series, the standalone series. It did it all. Deep Space Nine. It's amazing.
And this was very soon after the introduction of Ezri Dax.
Yes,
I think
Ezri. Ezri's awesome.
Yes, I love her.
Dick Fontaine's awesome. It's amazing.
He's amazing.
Everything they touched worked. It's incredible. Okay, Matt, how about you? What's your number one comfort food episode, Redux?
My number one comfort food Star Trek episode or movie, 5 words, the one with the whales, hashtag double dumbass on you. It is, of course, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
I'm so happy you picked this. It's on my. This is my secondary systems, and I thought about picking it for both times we've done this topic, and I never did. It's so great.
It's absolutely. This is for me when I'm feeling low and I want Star Trek to cheer me up. This is what I put on because it gives me probably the most comfort of any Star Trek media. I watched it just endlessly as a kid. I still think it's one of the most rewatchable Star Trek films. And a lot of Trek episodes and a lot of the Trek movies too have comedic elements. But this is the only Star Trek film that is just straight up a comedy from beginning to end. And it's absolutely hilarious, but the jokes never prevent it from feeling like Star Trek. Like the stakes are extremely high. The fate of the entire planet is at stake. Another thing I love about it is that there's no real antagonist in the traditional sense, but there is great tension. Like the probe isn't evil; it's just trying to communicate with the whales. So the antagonist is kind of the problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, there's literally no villain other than those damn whalers.
The damn whalers. Yes, but they take that. The fish out of water premise of the Enterprise crew being on Earth in 1986, and they mine it for every bit of humor that it's worth. And again, so many great quotes. Double dumbass on you.
Admiral, there'll be whales here.
I think he did a little too much LDS. Nuclear vessels.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's my all-time favorite Star Trek film. And it's not only a comedy, it's a message movie too. It's amazing how they do.
Wonderful
do
message
both.
about environmentalism and the damage that we will inflict on our own planet if we continue to treat Earth's resources as disposable. And that's something that really resonates with me on a personal level.
Me too. And the fact that at the time, humpback whales were really, really on the brink of extinction, and now they're not, and that's a great thing. So, Deanna, anything to add on The Voyage Home?
Yeah, so if I put movies in my top 5 pick, this would probably be my number one choice as well. Yeah. And I still remember it was very, very early on, again, nostalgia, very early on after I discovered Star Trek. My sister and we found this tape. I think it was at a bookstore for like $2. So we bought it. And I hadn't seen many of the Star Trek movies before. I'd only seen a few of the original series episodes. And we found this. We didn't know anything about it. So we put it on. And I remember just finishing it, and we were just like, that was the best thing ever. And we rewound it and watched it
so great.
Again.
That's awesome.
And I think that's the first time, and probably the only time I've ever done that, just rewatched a movie directly after watching it.
So
and it was
cool.
it's so good.
That's awesome. That's all-time great episode for sure.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the fantastic direction by Leonard Nimoy.
Of course.
And the score of this film is, I think, an underrated Star Trek score. It always sticks in my head. I think the music is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's go to my round one pick, and we didn't have any TOS picks until the last 2 here. So mine is from TOS as well. 5 words and a hashtag. Wish we'd seen more Pike. Hashtag you bet I'm tired. And I'm going all the way to the beginning. It's the Cage, the TOS pilot.
Nice.
I love this old-fashioned sci-fi episode of Star Trek. Totally satisfying, total comfort food for me. Like I think you had said this before, Matt. Like a big, warm, cozy blanket for me. I just love the cage so much. Pike, Vina, Telosians. And I tell you this. So my 5 words and a hashtag there, I went back to my list, my TrekRanks list, where this is ranked number 14 on TrekRanks for TOS. And I looked at my 5 words and a hashtag, which I wrote about probably 5-6 years ago. Wish we'd seen more Pike. And now I love this episode even more because we have seen more Pike. And it's incredible what Discovery has given us, this gift of the whole season 2 of Pike. If memory serves, Through the Valley of Shadows are just 2 iconic moments that basically serve now as prequels to The Cage and the Menagerie. And yeah, I just love this episode so much. I can rewatch it. It's really comfort food for me. Dana, what's your take on The Cage?
I love this pick. It's not what I would have expected, but I love it. And I just, in preparation for Discovery Season 2, Pike, of course, Matt and I rewatched this. I think it was the first time I rewatched it in probably like a good 10 years. Like it's a really good introduction to this whole universe. And I'm really glad that Kirk became the like flagship captain, for lack of a better term, but it's just a really good science fiction story.
Yeah,
it
really is. It really is. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I love that Discovery Season 2 almost serves as like a sequel to The Cage in a weird way. But I think, like you said in your introduction, this has a very like classic sci-fi feel to it. It's a little bit more, I don't know, 1960s for lack of a better term than Star Trek proper was once it got going with Kirk. But you see a lot of recognizable elements there. It's a very fantastical episode, and I love Jeffrey Hunter. Yeah. Sorry. I love Jeffrey Hunter's acting in this, when you can just kind of feel like he's like this, man standing alone against the adversity of being kept in this prison. You can feel his anguish, and he's just trying to get out. He's trying to plead with his captors, and I think it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, last thought I'll say, it's actually more 1950s sci-fi. It feels like a 50s sci-fi serial, which are one of my favorite things as well. I almost picked Forbidden Planet as my comfort food non-Trek, and it feels like that kind of era of sci-fi, and I love that it's what launched Star Trek. Okay, let's get into some quick secondary systems picks, just to rattle off a few picks that just missed our list. Dana, anything on your list?
So one of my episodes that I watched on the plane was Move Along Home.
Oh, yes. Great. Comfort food.
That one was my number 5 choice for a while, and then I kind of switched things around, so it didn't quite make the cut. But that one is it feels like a B movie, and I love it. And I have the Enterprise premiere, because it was the first Trek premiere I ever watched as it happened. The 2009 Star Trek, because I remember Matt and I on our first date, we talked about the upcoming Star Trek movie. It was really exciting.
Oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah. And Blink of an Eye, it's a great Voyager episode. Operation Annihilate from TOS.
Wow.
That was my first ever Star Trek episode that I watched. Cool. And that's the episode that started it all. So that to me is kind of a big nostalgic one.
That's an awesome deep cut. And of course, Broken Bow is the Enterprise pilot you mentioned. I love that. Matt, any on your list?
I had quite a few, so I don't think I'll rattle off all of them. But I had from TNG, I had Elementary Dear Data, Measure of a Man, I, Borg, Times Arrow 1 and 2.
Times Arrow.
Times Arrow almost made
very, because it's not like one of these classic 2-parters you think of, but it's fun. It's just fun and comfortable.
It is so great, and I love Whoopi Goldberg. I love all the episodes. Yep. Starship Mine I rewatched very recently, and that's a very kind of out of the box episode of TNG. I think it's a great episode for Patrick Stewart. He's alone on the ship, and trying to defend it against these people who are trying to use it for nefarious means. Man against adversity. I thought that was really great. From Deep Space Nine, I've got some fun episodes. I've got Our Man Bashir. So
Yeah, that's a great one.
Bashir as James Bond. That's wonderful. In the Cards, I think is a absolutely fantastic episode.
Yes.
And again, any Deep Space Nine episode that has Jeffrey Combs in a role is high up on my list. I also had Take Me Out to the Holosuite. Yes, Only a Paper Moon is a really great Nog-centric episode. Yeah. From Voyager, I had the 37s, and I had Future's End. So Future's End was on my secondary systems list. Yeah. And for the movies, I've got Search for Spock and Generations.
Fantastic. Love that list. And I'll tell you this, in Picard's Chateau, you can barely see it on screen, only if you freeze it and zoom in. There's a picture of him and Mark Twain together.
Oh, I'm gonna have to
Times Arrow. How great is that? So cool.
I'm gonna have to look up for that.
I'll rattle off a few. My toughest cut was Future's End, which of course is awesome comfort food. I also want to give a shout out to New Eden from Discovery. I just love that episode.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And I really, Data's Day is one that I thought about. Captain's Holiday, Team Vosh here at TrekRanks. And a special shout out, I already mentioned it once, I'm going to mention it again, but how could it not be on my comfort food list? Awakening from Star Trek Enterprise. So,
nice.
Of course.
One for me. Okay, let's get into our regeneration cycle. Going to be a little bit of an expanded, fun regeneration cycle with Dana and Matt.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, let's get a recap of our picks. Dana, run down your 5 picks.
So number 5 for me was Future's End from Voyager, because time travel. Number 4 was Cause and Effect from Next Gen, because time loop. Number 3 was North Star from Enterprise, because if you squint, it's time travel. And number 2 was Relativity from Voyager, because
total time travel.
And number 1 is Take Me Out to the Holosuite from Deep Space Nine, because it's fun.
I love it. So you had 2 from Voyager and then 1 each from Enterprise, TNG, and Deep Space Nine. Matt, how about you?
My number 5 pick was Caretaker, because it was a big deal for me when I was a kid. Number 4 was Trials and Tribulations from Deep Space Nine, because it's just a super fun episode. Number 3 is All Good Things, series finale of TNG, because it is an amazing series finale. Number 2 is Darmok from TNG, because it is quintessential Star Trek to me. And my number 1 pick was the film Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, because it is an amazing Star Trek movie with a great message, and it is funny as hell.
It really is. All right, you spread it around pretty good, too. 2 from TNG and 1 each from TOS, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. And my 5 picks, number 5 was Flesh and Blood from Voyager Season 7. Number 4 was the Circle Trilogy from the beginning of Season 2 of Deep Space Nine. Number 3 from Season 7 of TNG, Gambit. My number 2 pick was Enterprise, the shipment from Season 3 in the middle of the Xindi arc. And my number 1 pick, the original episode of Star Trek from TOS, The Cage. So I actually had 1 from TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. So I spread it around really good. And I will say that we all did a good job of some bonus Trek. Dana had 6 hours of Trek on her 5 picks. Matt had 8, and I really pushed it. I had 9 hours of Trek.
Nice.
In my 5 episode selections. Okay, so before we get into the stat breakdown, I want to get Dana and Matt's predictions for what they thought each other were going to pick. So, Dana, really quick, what were the 5 that you thought Matt was going to pick? And let's see if we had any that you got right.
So, in no particular order, I had Darmok.
Okay, check.
Data's Day,
Cool.
Time's Arrow, Trials and Tribulations, and Caretaker.
Amazing. So you got 3. That's pretty damn good.
5. Oh my gosh.
That's pretty damn good. Matt, how about you? What 5 did you think Dana was going to pick?
Okay, so I'm looking at my list. I've actually got 6 written down here, so I might just leave one out. So I had Operation Annihilate. I got that one.
That was on my secondary.
No, secondary system.
Oh, sorry. That was in your secondary system.
All right. What else?
All right. You know what? I'll leave that one out. Leave it out in the edit. I had Cause and Effect. I had Trials and Tribulations. I had Broken Bow.
Yep.
I had Carbon Creek. I'm surprised you didn't pick Carbon Creek.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. We didn't even mention that. I would have.
It was one of the ones I was thinking of, but it didn't.
What was the last one, Matt?
I had the Andorian Incident.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I actually had Future's End Part 1 and 2.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I miscounted.
Yeah.
I think you read. Did you say 6? Oh, whatever. It doesn't matter. You had 2. So, okay. That's amazing. All right. That was fun to actually break it down that way.
Yeah.
I will say that we had no duplicate picks, but we did have one crossover duplicate from our previous episode of Comfort Food, and that was the North Star pick when we heard Sirna Kohlrami, the Zachdorn master strategist, chime in. And the reason I dropped in that sound is because my number 1 Comfort Food episode of all time from that episode is Peak Performance. I can rewatch it at any time. I love me some Kohlrami.
Oh, that's a fantastic
So
one.
that's why I decided to drop him in.
As the Starfleet observer, I am ordering you to withdraw.
I am the captain of this vessel. Your order is nullified.
And all right, the stats really quick here. It's amazing. So I'm going to call the original 5 legacy series were all really, really well represented, but we didn't have any of the new series, which kind of makes sense. We didn't have Discovery, Picard, or the Kelvin timeline, or any short treks, which makes sense. Comfort Food, going back to the first 5 series, we had 2 each from TOS and Enterprise, 3 from Deep Space Nine, and 4 each from TNG and Voyager. So really spread it around on that glory era of Star Trek. Okay, well, we've already talked about cause and effect, but guess what? We've once again entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
And for this week's Temporal Causality Loop, we're going back to episode 73 and our top 5 crossover moments, which was part of our Picard series preview episodes. And of course, for a topic that awesome, we got a ton of amazing picks, one of my favorite episodes. So I'm going to read off 2 complete 5 words in a hashtag list that were just fantastic that we got in here. First, from Justin Oser at TrekFan4747. He did a cool mashup of ships and ship class crossovers. His number 5 pick was Enterprise 1701 in Discovery Season 2, which is a really cool crossover for the Enterprise ship. He had the Defiant when it showed up in Star Trek First Contact. So the Defiant from Deep Space Nine crossing over to First Contact. Nice. He had the Defiant again, the original TOS Defiant, when it crossed over and showed up in A Mirror Darkly, the 2-parter from Enterprise. He had a Galaxy-class crossover. It's the first time we really saw the Galaxy-class outside of, in a prominent way, outside of TNG, when it showed up in the Jem'Hadar at the end when the Odyssey got destroyed at the end of Season 2 of Deep Space Nine. And his number 1 pick was the Intrepid-class Bellerophon. Again, I'm saying that right, but basically the Voyager showed up in Inter Arma Enum Silent Legesse in Deep Space Nine, Season 7. I love that list from Justin. Super clever. And then our buddy Ross Webster, the Borg at Star Trek 1701. 5 words in a hashtag. Number 5, somehow he made these rhyme. So I don't know how this guy does this. He's a master wordplay guy. Engineer on a Dyson sphere. Hashtag Scotty comes back around. Of course, that is Relics. Number 4, Captain Spock turns back clock on Delta Vega found. This is going to do this. From Star Trek 2009. Number 3, Klingon 3 back on TV. Hashtag Kang, Koloth, and Core. From, of course, Blood Oath on Deep Space Nine. Number 2, C to Pow out and about. Hashtag within the Vulcan Forge. So I love that. That's Awakening. And is number 1, Trek Torch Pass to TNG. Hashtag 2 generations on the screen. Brilliant rhyming list from Ross Webster. Incredible. I should have just read it all straight through without my commentary. It would have made a little more sense and rhymed better. But you'll figure it out. Okay, and then 2 more awesome picks. One from Adam Sanders at MetsFan1701. He picked Vina from If Memory Serves, and I just wanted to give that a shout out because I don't think we mentioned that on the show. That was an awesome pick. And then at TrekFanRick, when his number 5 on his list was 5 words and hashtag when TNG and Enterprise meet. Hashtag not that one, and his pick was the USS Archer when it was mentioned in Nemesis. So little tiny mention. So love that that cool crossover for Archer. Okay, awesome picks. Definitely enough to get us out of this week's Temporal Causality Loop. So as always, I want to thank everyone for all your great responses to TrekRanks. Keep them coming to me at TrekRanks so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 comfort food episodes, Redux, or any list from our past shows. Send them to me at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP if you want to leave us a voicemail. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, it's that time again. We've done this for each new series of Trek that we've been treated to in the last couple of years, and now we have season 1 of Picard winding down. So our next episode, we're doing our top 5 Picard season 1 moments. So Dana and Matt, if you had to choose one moment or element or episode from Picard season 1, knowing that we're only 8 episodes in right now, what is your pick, Dana?
I would say, there's 2, and I'm going to say both of them. Seeing 7 of 9 for the first time in 20 years, beamed on that bridge.
Incredible moment.
That was just fantastic. Yep. And also seeing Hugh again was just, it was unexpected. Yeah. I mean, I know we saw the preview pictures beforehand, but it was just a really nice treat to see him again.
So cool. A great part of the series. How about you, Matt? Anything quick?
Yeah, I think my top Picard season 1 moment so far would be the wonderful reunion with Will Riker and Deanna Troi on the planet Nepenthe. It's such a heartfelt episode. You can feel the love between everyone there. And I also I think the character of their daughter Kestra is amazing, and I want to see more of her. Yes. I want her to grow up and go to Starfleet Academy and then become an ensign and have a show starring her.
That would be great.
Wild Girl of the Woods.
Why you gotta make me cry? So great. Absolutely phenomenal episode. Nepenthe is all-time great Trek, and there is a Starfleet Academy series rumored to be in development.
Yes.
It's pretty likely.
I'm so excited.
We gotta get Kestra on that.
Hire that girl. Get her into Starfleet Academy.
Yep.
Awesome job, guys. Any final Trek Subspace Commission communications you guys want to relay? Dana Kenedy and Matt Finbow. Dana.
Oh gosh, I really like Star Trek, and this was fun.
Perfect. Matt, I hope you had fun coming on the first time.
I was going to say this is my first ever experience of being invited on a podcast, and it was fantastic. I had so much fun, and I got to do it with my lovely and beautiful wife. So thank you. This has been
super
great.
Cool. Well, she's one of our favorite guests we have on. So, and I'm glad you guys are in the closer time. I love all you people in the UK and Australia and everywhere else, but it's hard to make the times match up to record. So
the T'Pol episode, it was like midnight.
That's right. Absolutely. I know. It was totally late.
It worked.
All right. Big thanks to Dana Kenedy and Matt Finbow. And thanks to all of you for engaging with us, as always, here on TrekRanks, episode 79 of the TrekRanks podcast. Want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please. Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard? How quaint.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
Searching. Darmok is the name of a 7th Dynasty emperor on Khanda 4, a mytho-historical hunter on Chantil 3, a colony on Melindi 7, a frozen desert on Tasna 5, a...
Stop search. Computer, how many entries are there for Darmok?
47.